Okay, James, thank you so much for taking the time to appear on the podcast.
Of course, it's great to be here. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Just in case anyone hasn't heard of you, do you want to just give us a brief overview of who you are and what it is you do now?
Yeah, I'm the founder of OPEX. We're a global fitness education company, and we basically are trying to raise the value of the fitness coach by what we do, how we do it. We try to inject information inside of other humans' heads
Hmm.
that are willing to do my education that raises their awareness of the principles of fitness coaching.
Great. And you guys have you program as well, don't you? So you have the coaching education, then you do some programming too.
Yeah, we have a subset organization, which is called the Big Dogs,
Hmm.
which offers online coaching through a coach to
Hmm.
client process for people who are really serious about fitness,
Hmm.
mainly competitive minded folks that we have over 500 clients around the world.
Right. So those are for people who are specifically wanting to compete in fitness as a sport or other things potentially.
Yes, yes.
So talk to us a little bit about your background then. How did you, because obviously you were
In
the
the
winner of,
fitness landscape.
yeah, in the fitness landscape,
Yeah,
you were the winner of one of the original CrossFit Games back in the day. And
yeah,
obviously it's been
yeah,
quite a journey since then. So,
yeah, yeah. It has been. Wow. I was a young athlete. This probably resonate with. I would assume you don't have engineers listen to you. You have fitness people listening to you. So um, I I'll try to put it in that tone. I was a young athlete as a kid, and then I got hurt playing a beloved sport in your neck of the woods, soccer,
all right. Yeah.
called something different, but same, beautiful aspect of it. And then after that, that helped me recognize physical fitness, and I wanted to learn about it. So I went to academia to study it,
Mhm.
got spit out of there, and got into the real world, and recognized I needed to do a lot of work to figure out where I was as a coach. This was mid 90s. And I just been doing it ever since. Did all kinds of fitness practice,
Mhm.
played with a whole bunch of things along that time, picked up things that a lot of your audience may recognize as CrossFit.
Mhm.
Saw it as a unbelievable new methodology or concept in regards to just doing work.
Mhm.
Added that to the toolbox, and yeah, participated in multiple different sporting events after as an adult. One of those was CrossFit, where I was fortunate enough in the first games that they held to win that event specifically, and then competed for a number of years after that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and just been, after a period of time, uh, personally for me, um, I had to balance that fine line between athleticism and humanity.
Mhm.
Uh, and recognize that as a great additional story to my awareness is seeing that there's a time and space for all those things at the right time, and there's also not a time and a space for those things.
Mhm.
And that's what gets me to where I am now. I'm 46, or I'll be 46 in a couple of days. I have two wonderful young growing daughters, 11 and 13 years of age. A wonderful relationship with my wife that's been almost 20 or over 20 years now. We've known each other. Been married for 15 of those years.
Yeah, don't get that
Um,
wrong.
I got an unbelievable business that I'm surrounded by a bunch of talented, really positive humans.
Mhm.
Um, Man, I'm pretty fucking grateful.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a great journey, and I guess because we chatted briefly before we came on air about the kind of journey from competing in CrossFit to kind of life afterwards. What
Yeah.
was that? What was that journey like for you? I guess because especially with founding OPEX and the idea of being more periodized and progressive with training, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I understood the first part of your question. If you need me to get into technicalities after, please push me to go there. But
Hmm.
I just had some aha moments, because I really do believe in the end it has to be self-evident of that
Hmm.
transition. Like people, and what I mean by that, you need to recognize that in yourself. Like a coach can browbeat you with it, but you'll never get it unless you get it.
Mhm.
And so there was a number of different things that I'm so grateful for, even in the process of participating in the sport, and a couple of those things are highlighting, like, my young daughters being down on the ground and me wanting to go down and play with them. And like, it was challenging for me to get to the floor. Right.
Right.
I joke about it, but I'm like, how human is that? You
Mhm.
know? And other things like, now that they get a little older and being able to participate in leisure activities and sport, right? Oftentimes after workouts or around the training, it's like, I actually can't, if you were to ask me, well, I could probably now, but just like get up from this couch and just fucking fly out the door going, a fast pace for a minute. No, but just think about that, and that's reflected of playing with my kids and just playing basketball or kicking the soccer ball around,
Mhm.
like I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. So how human is that, right? It's not that human. So a number of these things, whether you like it or not, if you're even giving yourself the chance, they're just going to punch people in the face over time,
Mhm.
and it'll become self-evident to them that there's this balancing act, to your point, of the athlete lifestyle and then moving it into living long and prospering. And then I
Sure.
can speak about it, right? And then I can teach people about it. And what it seemingly, Johnny, looked like we were like ahead of the curve. We just actually had principles in place that we just kept honoring,
Mhm.
right? Those principles have been there for 50 or 60 years,
Yeah.
right? It's just that we were like speaking to an audience who had a real hard time deconstructing what they just heard this person spit off a soapbox, right?
Mhm.
You just do anything all the time. This would just get better. It's like, and everyone was like, "Yeah, motherfucker," and then we were kind of like, just a second now, like, there's a way of going about it
Yeah.
that could be actually still as effective, right?
Mhm.
But it just looks slightly differently. And so therefore we looked like the smart ones, but it wasn't because of smartness. It was because we just stuck to the principles of what was inside that really fast spinning wheel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That was
Okay.
that was along the lines of what I was going for. This
Okay.
idea of, taking CrossFit as a model of constantly varied, high intensity functional movements. And when you look towards the sphere of what OPEX presents, as you said, it's
It's
more
progressive,
progressive.
personalized function,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
That's
And
how
as
we
you,
changed up that idea. So it could be some of those things inside that are same, right? It's just,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, it's dependent on the individual how much they go into that intensity curve. As you said, you were there for a number of years, and as you said, after a while it's going to punch you in the face, and you had to transition to something more sustainable.
Yep.
And I guess my question would be, in terms of you finding that you said those principles have been there for many years, right? you
Yeah.
you, you look down strength and conditioning principles of periodized fitness.
Yeah.
And so what was that transition for you to say, actually, we need to create a company where this is more evident for people, especially who are in the sport of fitness and who are doing functional fitness? You're saying, right, if you do want to be a concurrent training athlete, you actually
Hmm.
need to be a bit smarter about this for long-term progression, both in the sport and then outside of the sport in the future.
Yeah. Well, the intention for the design of the education
Mm-hmm.
wasn't largely due to this like madness inside of the black box idea.
Mm-hmm.
It came about, the intention as it came about, it's a lot of coaches were just asking, how do you blend all this concurrent method with the lifestyle and whatever? So how do you blend it all together? Do you know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And
Yeah.
that's, it sounds the same, but they're slightly two different roads, right? And I need to make that clear because my intention wasn't, as I started it, or to like teach people about what these principles are evident. If you
Mm-hmm.
want to think of it to make it real reductionist, is like, I just stood on the shoulders of giants that had said all these things, and I just put this little flare of dose response and modalities inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So it's just like, it's the same thing, right? Reward the pacer, intensity can't be done all the time, motor control before absolute strength. You can't do dynamic contractions unless you do a whole base support. All those things that were already done, right? That
Mm-hmm.
were already done in practice. So back to your point, I structured that, standing on this base support of what was true, right? What was true, and then just added things let's call it a transcendence of this mixed modal concept now, that we still don't have answers to, but at least it looked a little bit, it was a little bit more, it made sense a little bit more, you know, it made sense.
Yeah. And that's great, because I think it's a difficult one to not get right, but well, it is, because concurrent training research itself is very, very, very low. And
yeah, dude, I mean, this is what people still don't get, is like, that's why, because if you look at all the stupidness around the structure and the fucking stupidness around the culture and all the stupidness, people are like, well, why are you still doing it? It's like, because it's a fucking admirable, hard question.
Yeah.
Right? It's fucking difficult. And that's why I tell all coaches who surround me, you don't need to be a CrossFit coach of someone who wants to compete in the sport, but you should know what's required to make someone good at the sport. You see that? And those are obviously two different things, but I mean, that's why we still are doing it. To your point, it's a hard thing. That's what, I mean, I keep saying, there's like decades of work left, right? Of hours per day, and like decades of it before we get to this like somewhat understanding of this mixed modal concept, where it fits into fitness, where it fits into health, where it fits into just, you know, why people should do it at all, etc. So it's hard.
It is. Yeah, because it's very, very new. It's still very young when compared to the rest of sports and conditioning research.
Yeah. I mean, the concurrent scientific model is a great base support, right? Like, if you do this, this will affect this. If you do this, it'll affect this. That's a great base support, you know. But I think we got decades of work to do as a whole to kind of figure that out a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, you know, you and I are both talking on a bit of a, well, not that much of a level, but in terms of we know what that concurrent training research is. But let's dig into that a little bit more, because there will definitely be plenty of listeners who are listening to this and they're saying, well, I'm trying to get strong, but I also want to be fit, and I also want to be good at gymnastics, and I also want to PB my snatch. And, you know, it's like, how many plates can you spin at once?
Well, whew. This is the tough one, but we'll back up and
let's break it down and move through it.
This is probably where you'd want to have a commercial.
roll the advert.
Your sponsorship would come in.
I'll get the broccoli.
Johnny Lundell's, and we're selling tea biscuits, and please sign up on my link in bio for tea biscuits. And then they come back, and now they're all calm with their tea and biscuits, ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
So I don't even know where to start on that one. So, you know, and the reason why I'll start back here is that fitness is, you know, we really don't have to do fitness today. Like we don't have to do what we see in front of us today to keep moving forward and to you know, increase recombination of ourselves and like to make it better. Let's just start there. Okay. So then why is the conversation important? It's important generally for a sporting or performance conversation. Now, the reason why I need to quickly go there, I just answered indirectly. If you're concerned around muscle gain and fat loss and all that shit and concurrent training, you're actually asking the wrong questions.
Sure.
It's like, it's so lower order to even, what should I do? What should I do? Just fucking do something. Just do it. Do whatever, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's because it's got nothing to do with you living long and prospering.
Sure.
Because that's the beacon of why you do fitness, right? So if you're like, well, no, I want to know how to be good at all those things, then now we get into the conversation of, after intention, now we get into the conversation of, well, how do they all work together? And before you even get into how they all work together, you have to recognize that what someone can express largely dictates the dose effect. I'll say it again. What someone can actually express dictates the dose effect. So if you're going after a dose effect, i.e., you want to know if cardio and strength are effective, you first have to ask the question, can you actually express either of the two? Now that's important, because you could take a 16-year-old young female who is just starting fitness and get her ridiculously strong and ridiculously aerobic. at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So if it's true for the 16-year-old, it's quite possibly true for a fucking millions of other people, right?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, and everyone will just pile on like, well, she's not fully into crime, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't fucking matter. Your context has to go back to what can they actually do that largely dictates what you mix together, right? And you see, if you start there, then now you go, this is the power of personalization. This is the power of recognizing what people can actually do first before we just pile on virtue signal 5x5 versus cardio versus, it's like, that's all such lower order conversation. It's such, anyways, I'm browbeating, but it's such moot points, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then you move up and say, okay, so if it is about what someone can express and how you move things together, and we'll just put it into 3 buckets: gain, pain, sustain. Gain means resistance. Pain means glycolytic. Sustain means aerobic training. You do need to recognize that there has to be some utility in you doing them, right? That's what then dictates what you should do and when. So what's the utility in doing resistance? What's the utility in doing pain? What's the utility in doing sustain? And because that's a whole podcast for another time, just recognize gain, you can get stronger. You do resistance, heart contractions. Pain, it has a short half-life because you learn how to be unsustainable. And sustain gives you a number of different really positive properties to be able to do shit for a long period of time, okay? And you can include all of the physiological variables inside of that. So then you start saying, well, if people can now express it, what do you choose? Your question should then be, what's the utility in them? Not how should I mix them? It's what's the utility? Yeah. So if you want to get stronger and live long, what are you going after? Gain and sustain. If you want to learn how to be unsustainable, you go after pain. If you want a metabolic response only, you go after pain. You see my point? The utility of them needs to work together. Then over time, you can start looking at the scientific aspect of the dose effect, recognizing that when you do gain alone, when you do pain alone, when you do sustain alone, just think of it. After each of those workouts, you will have an effect, right? You will have an effect. And the one that has the largest impact on knocking down the other 2, this is how you balance 3 balls, right? Is you have to recognize if you can express pain, it lowers your capability of expressing gain, and it lowers your capability of expressing sustain when you get good at pain. So now you can start saying, okay, so I heard you, then, what should I do then if my utility is to do cardio and strength at the same time? You just heard me. Don't do glycolytic activity because it hampers both of them. Okay. Now let's move on and say, okay, if I want to do gain sustain, what should I do? Well, now it gets more mechanical. It gets more mechanical and systemic. What I mean by that is that you can do gain and sustain at the same time. And this is fundamentally, Johnny, where science is way behind on the concept of it, is that you can do gain and sustain at the same time, but you have to be conscious over the mechanical interventions inside of each. Think of this way. You could do, and I'll make it super simple for those to understand. You could swim 15 hours a week, right? 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, trying to get more aerobic, doing your cardio, okay? And then you could go on land and do strength, squatting only, 3 days a week, and both of them over time will improve. Caveat, you can't run 5 days a week for 3 hours each time and squat 3 days a week, and both of them improve. You see the difference there?
Yeah.
It becomes a mechanical intervention of gain versus sustain. And this is the artistry of coaching, of the prescription that has to go into that.
Yeah, no, it's really well laid out. As you said, it's the utility. It's the utility.
That's a deep one.
It is, but that's good because that's what I wanted to go over. Okay. And as you briefly talked about the how what actually goes within them is a podcast for another time, and I agree, it probably is. But it's great how you specified, if you want to get stronger and fitter, then it's a case of maybe you should focus most of your work now on gain and sustain for a long period of time and forget pain until it's time for you to actually use it.
Yeah,
as you said there.
If you need
to.
Because remember, it's a short half-life.
Mm-hmm.
You can't train it as a training tool for a long period of time.
No.
You learn how to be unsustainable. It creates shitty behaviors of nutrition and lifestyle. And it makes you weaker.
Yeah.
I just find that so funny.
Yeah.
People are like, well, why would you do it? It's like, exactly. I don't know why. Why would you do it? Well, the other funny one to think about is that it won't make you a Jason Bourne. Everyone thinks it will, but it won't.
No.
And they're like, oh, SEALs and emergency medical practitioners and firemen, they all do it. It's like, actually, no. They want to fucking stay as far away from red line as possible because it lowers mental acuity and they can't make good decisions.
Yeah, those types of people are actually doing a lot of longer, more aerobic style workouts and true resistance training. Yeah,
which offers a better buffer when adrenaline and epinephrine need to come up and they need to do stressful situations.
Yeah, it's a great point, because so often I will have that conversation with people who are saying, I want to get stronger and fitter, and then you say, so why are you doing really intense workouts all of the time? But that's what we got bought into, and it's what people do a lot because of that.
Well, Johnny, they do have data and empirical observational stuff on their side. But let me explain it, right? Let me explain that. Hopefully I can explain is that when people get the shit scared out of them, right, and do intense shit for 4, 6, 8 weeks, they actually do improve general health measures, physical performance, capacity, strength. But it's on a shitty base support, right? Not only is it wrong intentions, meaning they think they're going to become an Adonis in 8 weeks, which is incorrect intentions. It's after 8 weeks, they go, well, what do I do now? And I was like, oh, fuck, you can't have a morning erection. Your libido is down. And now the only thing you can do is to beat the shit out of yourself more. So then what does it do then? Now we got new behaviors, better pre-workout, new supplements, diet strategies. Unfortunately, it gets into performance enhancing shit then over time. Why? Yeah. Because they took the fast track, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But you see, there's a time stretch on it. I've always said, and I clearly say this publicly now, you take 1,000 people who do the high intensity model for 6 months, and you take 1,000 people who do the OPEX long game model for 6 months, and the high intensity model people will kick the shit out of our folks. Lower body fat, increased lean mass, general health measures, even better A1C possibly, fucking, all that shit. But what happens after 12 months? It starts to even out. What happens after 6 years? Complete opposite, 4x increased general health measures for the OPEX group and a stagnation and a drop in the intense group. That's just, it's been, so you see what is the problem there, Johnny? No one wants to take 6 months to figure it out.
No, everyone wants the quick result now, and the supplement and the CBD oil so that they can actually move their elbow joint and sleep at night and everything else. Yeah,
the creams.
all of it, all of the stuff.
The creams.
But it's because as you said, there's empirical data on their side, but that can often be the issue with research of that type, is that it's short term. When you're doing resistance training research for 6 to 8 weeks. So
that's all the academic virtue signaling for high intensity.
Yeah.
That's all. 8 weeks, we did this. 60 seconds is better than 30 minutes of slow distance. Like, what are your markers?
Yeah.
Oh, this little measure of VO2 max. Oh, okay. Is that important for people after 3 years? Oh, we're not interested in answering that question.
They don't have the money to.
Why not? People do fitness to last a lifetime. They're not just looking to do it. So you can just see commercial interest in academia just feeding what the market wants, right? We need to have this 8-week thing that we can sell.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like when we think about the principles of training, if you put people through an intensification period for 6 to 8 weeks, then all of their 1 rep maxes and their performance data will go up. But it's as you said, they can't then just continue to improve by continually applying intensity over time, they've then got to backtrack and go through a stage of lower intensity, higher volume, and
Yeah.
rinse and repeat the process.
Yeah, no, what you just said is a great like transcendence of thought, meaning that, yeah, you can get to a sweet spot where you get the effects of intensity, and we're loosely describing intensity here.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking more so about metabolic intensity, not mechanical intensity. So
Sure.
metabolic intensity, yeah, like get to these points is like, okay, but then you got to have someone as a coach or someone to guide you to be like, pull back a bit now, have a little patience. Let's do some slower shit, build on some skills, and then we'll have another, let's call it life peaking event,
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
in a couple of months, right? It's like, let's build up again and then pull back. But that's an intricate low amplitude living, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what you and I were talking about is high amplitude madness, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
Sure.
madness and then don't hear from them. Madness, don't hear from them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a big difference
We
between.
know when they all disappear, right?
Yes, exactly. A big difference
Yeah.
between building to a set of like testing versus let's just do high intense workouts all the time.
Yeah, I like that. Great language. Yeah.
Mm. And so, for those that are listening to this and they're thinking, okay, well, I want to start actioning some of this change because
Yeah.
I'm bothered about long-term progression. It's a case then of,
Mm.
but they're still very much sucked into their way of training. Is there a
Yes.
way for them to adapt a certain model for them to still do group training and to get some benefits on the side? What would that look like for these people?
Well, group training thing, you just threw me for a loop in there, but I'll go back to the principles of, expression that could largely
Mm-hmm.
dictate it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I just gave you two: focus on gain, focus on sustain.
Mm-hmm.
The data in itself will make you recognize what works well with each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll know it. I mean, you'll be like, oh, I'll do a bunch of cleans and then squats and then lots of lunges, and then I'll do an assault bike session. It's like, that didn't work out, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you're like, okay, well, maybe I should have been in the pool, with a pull buoy and doing, 100-meter intervals of free, right? So you see that, it's like, oh, okay, now you're starting to think a little bit more critically of doing both of them at the same time moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to long term, I mean, it's endless. I've drawn up multiple different schematics. I have a theory that I posit is the best plan for people forever. The place where you need to go though is some uncomfortable buckets, which means that number one, the majority of the population who participates in resistance should never move outside of absolute strength, right?
Okay.
And I know that's a really hairy, uncomfortable conversation for people,
Mm-hmm.
but just because barbell cycling and snatches exist does not mean it has utility for living long. Okay. And I'll just end it there and you can think for yourselves what that's like. So you can build a fucking 80-year program of resistance in absolute strength, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can. And I've done it. You could search for we call it OPEX life gain. I've laid it out for people. It moves people through full body resistance into splits, into isolated scenarios, back to splits, back to full body resistance. And it takes you like 60, 70 years to complete it. So there's lots of work in there for resistance where you can do variation, blah, 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 blah. With regards to the conditioning aspect, this is where it's a little bit more also uncomfortable. People want to do dynamic contractions that are aerobic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it gets hairy because a lot of them will never be able to experience it in an aerobic environment, right? They're thinking, oh, I like wall balls, I like kettlebell swings, I like burpees, I like chest to bar pull-ups, and I like double unders, and I want to make them aerobics. Like, you may never actually be able to make them aerobic in your lifetime. So what I would say is to get people to back up, just like the conversation I did with the absolute strength speed conversation, and say, maybe all I ever do is a shit ton of cyclical cardiovascular modalities, strict gymnastics, and strict absolute resistance inside of aerobic activities for a really long period of time, and move from this concept over time of cyclical aerobic work, i.e. just think of it as like you're only doing rowing, you're only doing assault bike, you're only doing VersaClimber, you're only doing swimming, you're only doing bike, right? And then over time, mix those cyclical activities with strict gymnastics and do that for years and years, all different kinds of combinations. And then over time, you can put kettlebell, deadlift, push-up, and rowing in your aerobic activities. And then that'll transition over time where you might be able to make them more dynamic over time, but it'll at least give you so I just gave you like a 80-year program of resistance and aerobic activity. The resistance should look like something and the aerobic activity should look like something. And that's what I think should be the pathway for most people. It's just that it's uncomfortable because it takes creativity. It takes, you got to drop ego. People are frightened to death. They're going to be missing out on something really cool. Instagram, you won't get Instagram likes if you're just doing rowing and push-ups. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true.
You get the whole drift. So.
Yeah, I think, you covered definitely what I wanted to ask, because I think that's what people do, because people are caught into this dysfunctional fitness bug, right? And I was definitely there myself. And it's this idea of, I love doing gymnastics and I love doing Olympic lifting, and I love it all, and I've just got the bug and I want to go forward. I want to compete in all these things. But it's, as you said, I think some people sometimes need to take a step back and be like, do you actually need to do a lot of these things to be fit and healthy? No. And then I guess it comes down to like, why do you want to do these things really well?
Yes. And if it's going to pay off for what your priorities are, that's it. Right. And so that's why, like, you may know, if you don't know, for OPEX, we really focus on consultations, is because just like what you and I are doing, you can't presume someone's intentions with a 30-second conversation. And as a coach, you can't fall prey to the like, oh, that's what you said you want to do, so butterflies and rainbows and positive psychology, let's do it, and that's fitness today.
Yeah.
It's like, and there's all this piling on of like, oh, don't challenge clients. No, you got to be very positive and don't step on their toes and don't tell them the truths and be friendly. Make sure they're, listen, they're moving, and that's positive, right? You see that? It's all like this positive psych shit about those intentions, Johnny. That's where it gets all screwed up. So that's why we believe you got to sit down with someone for like 90 minutes and like go back and forth. It's like this. Hi, Nancy, why are you here? Oh, I do it for faith and family and for function. Okay, so why are you doing this? Well, I just want to, look good and, be there for my kids. Okay, so Nancy, tell me a little bit more about that. So why you want to do it? Well, I just want to lose a little bit of weight. Okay, so why do you want to lose a little bit of weight? Well, my friends were doing this thing, and okay, so why do you think your friends were doing those things? Oh, well, now that I think about it, they're probably just influenced based upon something they read in a magazine. It's like, okay, interesting. So now back to your point. So what you see what I'm saying? It's like, that takes 90 minutes for Nancy at the end to go, I shouldn't be here. This is probably not going to help me. And I need to get my intentions correct before I can come back here and you can help me. Let's be completely honest, right? Or at the end, Nancy will go, you know what? You are correct. Right? And that's just not what you want as a coach, but Nancy goes, you know what? You're correct. I have this shit inside of my brain that makes me think, whether it came from society or my parents or whatever, that being fatter makes me less of a human. Okay. I just stated it. And it's the first time I've stated it with someone. So thank you for allowing that open space for me to do it. And then secondly, Nancy goes, and thank you for making me aware that I just have to be fucking consistent for 3 times a week for the next 40 years to actually stay upright on this fucking planet, right? And then there's another thing she goes, and thank you for taking all those behavioral constraints that society and fitness has placed upon me of this judgment of fucking everything I put in my mouth, right? But you see that after 90 minutes of that initial, like, why are you here? Oh, faith and family. And it's like, you're not here for that.
Yeah.
So how do you get that out? You don't get that out by saying, here's your heart rate monitor, stay in this fucking zone.
Yeah.
You see that? It's sickening, Johnny. It's fucking sickening. What the system is not set up for it. It's just not set up for it.
No, the system at the minute, as you said, it's set up for people to get in and out, get a sweat on, and enjoy doing it. That's why they're all set up that way.
You and me are on a podcast here, right? Taking 60 minutes of our time, talking about something that a shit ton of people don't care about. They don't. They
Yeah.
fucking don't care. Their intentions are like fitness. Dude, fitness is a fix.
Mm.
It's a lifestyle fix. You know, you imagine how many people, right, think that they're like, oh, fitness will fix that. You know, I'll just like treat myself like a piece of shit for 8 years and work this job. And then I can always come back to fitness because they think in 4 to 6 weeks, this shit will be gained.
Yeah.
You see that?
Mm-hmm.
That's embedded in culture now. Like it's
Mm.
embedded as an intention. So how do you and I, how does your audience grow that, like the nudge that's needed to like wake people the fuck up on these intentions of fitness? That's
Mm.
the only way we're going to grow this thing, is for people to, you know, to basically wake up and go, I'm going to ask this question 5 times in a row and
Mm-hmm.
be honest with myself. Why am I really doing this? Why am I really doing it? And if we get to this honest place, you know what? It'll be all the same thing. At least we'll be in the facility knowing why we're doing what we're doing. You know, no, it
Mm.
won't be the shitty intentions.
Mm. It's a great point. As you said, people think that fitness is going to overcome years of neglect in a short space of time, and
And that's just one
that's
example, but they all think it's just a fix for something.
exactly, yeah. And
But you and I hold it as a much honorable, you know, thing, right?
mm,
You and I see fitness as an opportunity for people to challenge their bodies physically, to get a self-assessment of who the fuck they are and if they're really worth anything, and it allows them to change their behaviors based
mm-hmm,
upon that. Think about that. What I just said, take fitness out of the context. What else out there is there?
mm,
There's not a lot, dude, to do that. Your pastor doesn't do it anymore. You know what I'm saying? Your politician, your community leader doesn't do it anymore. Your doctor for fucking sure doesn't do it anymore. You know what I'm
no,
saying? No one is out there having the opportunity to be in the trenches to ask people these questions.
mm,
Instead, it's just a pylon of making money around fixing shitty lifestyles. And it's resembled in your neck of the woods, brother. You guys got some problems with long-term incidences of cancer and trying to fix that,
mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
obesity, you know, you're better than America on that, but it's not going down over there.
No, I mean both
So
our
that's a
sides are.
reflection. It's a reflection, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's about how important you think the conversation is. And I think intentions really do matter. And I don't think fitness has to be placed inside of a medical model, which
Mm,
unfortunately it is. It's like, you know, people are browbeating everyone with this new concept now. You can biohack it through fitness, right, to get healthier. And
mm,
that's, again, the wrong intentions, because
mm,
people are actually now doing fitness to not get diabetes.
yeah,
That's fucking wrong.
yeah.
You see that? That's wrong.
Mm. Yeah, it's not pairing up the rest of what's going to make such a big difference, isn't it? Like fitness is a small part compared to nutrition and lifestyle, and that is actually what the game is around is nutrition and lifestyle. That's where you're going to make most of your gains.
Yeah, but well, you call lifestyle, I think maybe we want to change our language to behaviors,
Sure. Yeah.
right? Behaviors, you know, lead that, or is reflected based upon nutrition. But I think, to back up, it needs to be the conversation needs to focus more around intention,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and if there's a hard issue with changing people's intentions, we need to get excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
About, like, well, how do we work on changing intentions, right? And how, you know how you change intentions? Number one, you criticize bad ideas.
Mm-hmm.
You got to call out the bad actors who are actually promoting bad intentions, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I constantly do, which pisses people off, and I'm okay with it because I'm older. It doesn't really matter anymore, right? But it
Sure.
would have mattered 15 years ago. No, I wouldn't have said it 15 years ago because I'd be afraid to be seen as a vigilante or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't care anymore because I know that you have to criticize bad ideas, because that'll wake people up to, like, oh, why is he so pissed about that? Oh, interesting. I never thought about it that way. Boom. A little change in trajectory of thinking, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So change the intentions around it. And to your point, with something that you and I indirectly have been associated with, is because I know you've been looking at it, is this context around how nutrition fits into the longevity scheme.
Mm-hmm.
So many people are piling on different kinds of things that need to be inside nutrition. No one wants to ask the question again around intention. What is the goalpost?
Mm-hmm.
If the goalpost is for nutrition to allow you to live long and prosper, why don't you do whatever in nutrition that gets you to that point?
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? But the goalpost is always, What gets you leaner in 8 weeks? What
Mhm.
gains lean muscle mass? What is a group that has been studied in a award that made people fatter or leaner based upon the macronutrient profile? We're talking about these things. It's like, that's got nothing to do with the intention of what you said food should do. Do you see my point?
Yeah, definitely.
It's gotta all go back to intentions. What
Mhm.
is your intentions?
Mm.
And the sad thing is that there's been a million stories of a great book that's been written of what that should look like.
Mhm.
It's been written, but
Mhm.
we want to turn our back on it
Yeah, well, it's the fitness
because
industry
it's not
today.
sexy.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say.
Because
It's
if I
not
told you
sexy.
what the book is, it's like, that's not worthwhile.
Yeah, no, screw that. You know, because
Plants and animals, balance it out. Drink some water, get some sunshine, do some resistance, do sustainable works. Like, it's not that. That's not sexy.
well, yeah, it's true. People are just turning further and further away from that because they're looking for either the quick fix or something a lot sexier, as you said,
Yeah, and
rather
because
than
information is so shared now,
yeah.
you don't even know what's true anymore, which is the sad aspect of the science,
Yeah, that's so true. I was having a
right?
consultation just with someone last night when we were talking about, if these people say this and these people say this, and they both have science to back it up. So, who am I supposed to believe when they directly
Good
contradict each other?
question. Good question.
And it's looking beyond those to what principles do they share? And
Yeah, and you and I might be dead before it takes enough time for us to come to a consensus on that.
if we ever do,
Maybe
hope.
coconut oil will kill you in 3 years.
So I think CBD oil is going to get there
I
first.
think. No, sorry. I think it's due for eggs to come back
Eggs are
because I
definitely
think
going
it's
to come
only been
back.
8 weeks
Yeah,
since
yeah.
they were going to kill you.
Eggs is definitely going to come back on the scene.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
with the plant-based
This is our predictions for 2020.
well, with the plant-based market having such a hype at the moment, I think the carnivore
Oh,
diet's going to
eggs are
have a
definitely coming
huge
back.
uproar. Yeah, for sure. James, we've covered a lot of topics here, and I think talking there about asking people around their true intentions and their true whys is great, because a lot of people definitely get into fitness because their primal instincts are they want to look good naked and they want to procreate.
Yeah, and all we're saying is just be aware of that, and it's okay.
Yeah.
That's it. But no one's asking themselves that question, right? I get it. I get it. If you're at that age, you're 16, trying to figure out where you are, right? About leaving the nest and the future leaving the nest. Like how do I fit into this thing? That's good,
Mm.
but you need to be aware of that. You're
Mm.
22. How am I going to recombine and procreate and like move on in this thing and operate here? I understand that. But still ask that question, right?
Mm.
You're now 30, you got a couple of kids or you're doing your job and you're in it, right? You're becoming more conscious, right? You're just like, whoa, I'm really kind of waking up now.
Mm.
Now you can start testing that little conversation on longevity, right? Like,
Mm.
why are you doing all this stuff that's going to lead to a really nice story, right? Like a 40-year, really effective, powerful, fulfilling, content story of what life is and what living is.
Yeah.
Uh, that's what the 16 and the 24-year-old and the 30 needs to ask, right? And all
Mm.
I'm saying is just ask the questions, like, and don't be afraid of recognizing that you may have some behaviors in your head already and biases that say this is what everyone told you why you should be doing fitness.
Mm.
That's okay. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm.
I'm just saying be aware of it.
Yeah, it's a great point, because I think a lot of people will find themselves on the other side of the intensity curve, as you said, as they get to their 30s, and then they're like, okay, well, what's next? What do I,
Yes.
why am I doing this,
Yeah.
and what's the
Yeah.
journey from here? And I do want to improve, but I can't keep balancing all of these plates and
Yeah.
punching
They start even seeing
myself in the
that
face.
the practice is unsustainable,
Yeah.
right? It's like, oh, they can start to, see it for themselves, right? I just hope that we don't lose people in that process where they get so jammed up by their 30s that we're just rehabbing them for 30 years, And
Yeah.
that's why they're so easy to prey on with biohacking and microdosing and fasting and et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
It's just so easy to do that to that group, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because as you said, especially if they are run down and then, or they're injured in a certain way.
It's a
Uh,
savior.
yeah,
It becomes
because
like a saving grace, right?
and well, as you said, with the shared information, the amount of products out there, and the information constantly in your face through things like social media, you are going to be hit with an ad as soon as you look up, like, how do I fix my shoulder pain?
Oh, for
You're
sure.
going to be hit with ads being like, this will help, and this will
For
help, and here's
sure.
a rehab
Right.
program, and here's a thing that you can do for 4 weeks that will fix it. And
Yeah. I mean, I think I didn't say it, but if I said carnivore, 6 times in our meeting, I mean, that's showing up, on my Instagram feed and Facebook. Like
absolutely,
that's just reality.
I know.
So it's what it, but yeah, it seems kind of nihilistic, but it's just reality. So we got to be able to mesh with that. We got to recognize that our actions and our voice and like what we do and what we do every day and say will lead to us being surrounded by what we're asking for, essentially.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's great. I was gonna cycle back and ask about, you were talked to, and we can make this the last kind of point. We've talked a lot about you saying people need to have the ability to express something right before they can actually do it, and a lot of people are getting into, say, gymnastics, Olympic lifting, before that they could probably express it. And you talked about absolute strength. I'm on a level where I understand your language.
Okay.
I guess it's saying, to the people out there, if they do want to move beyond absolute lifts, absolute strength, and strict strength, and they want to do more dynamic work, what would you say is the journey for them to get there, rather than fast tracking themselves through a class?
Well, quickly, the journey takes about 10 to 12 years, to be really honest, of 3 to 4 times a week. That's honest. Okay. And for that's for 98% of most people. And so just that sometimes just stops the conversation because no one wants to further listen on, and that's okay. You can get off the call now if you want, right?
Yeah.
But the way that it's defined, and this is the key point, right? Everyone thinks that because they show up for a 5K race, they did a 5K race. And this is where it gets really muddled, right? Just because you showed up doesn't mean that you've expressed the 5K. So we have to then define, what do you mean by expression? And that's why I say 10 to 12 years for the dynamic contractions made aerobic, is because we define expression as being able to express that characteristic you want to do and then quickly recover from it such that you can do it again. So the ultimate expression of a 5K is actually someone who shows up, does the 5K, can walk around and rest and drink water for a half hour, and then do the 5K again at the same fucking speed at steady state. You see that? But people are like, no. What I learned was you just do these intervals, you pose method, 100, they go like this, get the t-shirt. Yay! It's like, no, that's not a 5K expression. That's not a 5K expression, because your power dropped throughout the entire thing. Your pace per kilometer went down during the entire thing. You now have a slight niggling injury on the outside of your right knee now. You see what I'm saying? It looks like you actually did it, but I call that participation. Not completion or expression. So to define chest to bar pull-ups in an aerobic environment, back to your point, just because you can do 22 in a row doesn't mean you can make them aerobic. You have to be able to do 100 plus in a workout and make them sustainable as they're dynamic, and such that you could recover and then repeat that same skill. And just a ton of people can't. So a lot of people get stuck there because they're like, well, I think you're putting way too unnatural standards on capabilities, right? And that's a fair argument. That's a fair argument. But to me, I really don't care, because I have just hurt so many shoulders and prescribed incorrectly over time, and have been around long enough to see the downside of doing that compensatory model, that it actually doesn't improve people long term. That's the reason why I choose to do that. And so it'll just take 10 years for people to see what I've seen. And that's okay. But that's why I just stop at, like, I can't provide you white paper evidence. I can't cherry pick 35 different studies that, you know what I'm saying? I got nothing else to offer to it. Just I need you to make sense of it. And if you don't believe me, I'll just work hard on changing my language so that I can make sense of it for you over time.
Sure.
But hopefully my 5K story makes sense to people. The marathon story is the same thing. It's another funny one, right? Like,
Yeah.
I did a marathon. It's like, oh, so you held the same pace the whole time? No. Oh, well, so you just participated?
Mm-hmm.
But people are like, well, fuck you, man. I did it for diabetes. It's like, what? Where the fuck did that come from? Like, I'm just talking about your actual output.
Yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? Like, everyone gets so emotional over the truth around expression
Mm-hmm.
that's really the thing that we can't get behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Back to my point I said earlier, it's like, oh, you can't do a pull-up, right? And then they take it as, oh, you're telling me I'm weak as shit. It's like, wait now, no. But it's important you can do 3 strict pull-ups.
Yeah.
And then this is back and forth on like bands and kipping and whatever. It's like, no, you need to take 3 years to be able to do 3 strict pull-ups.
Mm-hmm.
You see that? And no one has the guts to tell them the truth on that.
No.
We want to wrap it around. We want to wrap it, to make sure everyone feels good.
Yeah, we want to scale it and make sure everyone looks like they're doing that kind of thing because
And
it
that
looks
goes
cool.
into a separate point then, Johnny, which I'd love to do with you another time on
Sure.
the coaching profession, right? Because
Yeah.
everyone's on board now as a coach. Anyone could be a coach, and therefore the value of the profession is down where you're not going to get a lot of people making those comments to people. Where it's like, oh, you want to do that? Oh, well, let me tell you what you need to do in order to get there. Clients would appreciate that.
Yes. Yeah.
They would, but coaches don't have the guts to basically do it, or they're just lacking in competence.
Yeah. Well, as you said, it's having that coach that sits down with you for 60 to 90 minutes and gets you to ask the important questions and then sets
And the
out
coach doesn't want to do it either. This is what you went through. I remember this, right? We talked about this, the pain. When you start assessing people, you can't unsee it anymore.
Yeah.
Like when you have those conversations, now you go back to your gym, you're like, oh my God.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh my God. She's telling me that she just wants to be loved and accepted. And you go back to the gym and you're like, oh my God, I can't prescribe that to her anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She just wants to be a bit leaner, have some social connection.
Just wants to be consistent, man.
And you're crushing her with Karen. Consistent. Yeah. No, James, it's been a great talk. Where can people find more about you, your mission, and where are the best places to send people?
OPEXfit.com.
Great.
And everything there.
I'll tag that in the show notes as well as your own social handles. James, thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Johnny. It was nice to speak to you again after a long while. Hopefully it won't take too long before we do it again.
Sure.